Pillars of Eternity 1 Ultimate Edition Guide, Starter's Guide. This would be everything that a beginner in a CRPG should know about. I'll cover every single aspect of the game, everything that's important and everything that you need to know, because Pillars has its own rule sets that are different from other CRPGs, and in order to play this game efficiently, you will need to know all of those rule sets. Let's not waste time, and let's go. Pillars is 10 years old game. Now it's anniversary, 10 years anniversary. So I am 10 years late, but this is gonna be something very useful even 10 years later. So stick around and let's go. As always, we start from the beginning. On a new game, you're gonna get to pick the difficulty that you wish to play on, as well as additional difficulties. How you should play, what you should play. You should try and playing on the hardest difficulty available. What is the reason for it? It's not only the challenge, it's bigger amount of enemies and more enemy placements on maps. It's literally a different game when you play on normal and when you play on Path of the Damned, because again, more enemies doesn't only mean bigger challenge, it also means more fun. So you're losing on a fun factor if you decide to go with anything below hard and Path of the Damned. So have that in mind. Better learn to play the game and play it on a harder difficulty in the case of Pillars than just going on normal and below. That's the first rule and something very important for the start of the game. Pick hard or Path of the Damned. I gotta stress it out again. Path of the Damned is like playing a different game because of the hilarious amount of opponents that you're gonna face. It's not like in other games, just flat stats increase. This is additional amount of enemies equals more fun. Now, the most important question is, what class should you play? What race should you play? And so on. Race doesn't matter that much, but class, there's 11 classes in a game, from Barbarian to Monk. So all of these are the classes that you can play, with different skill sets, different spells, different gear, different setups, and so on. And these would be all companions in a game that you're gonna encounter. Guess what? Exactly 11. 8 in the main campaign and 3 in the DLC, or better to say in the White March. So we got Wizard, we got Fighter, we got a Priest, we got a Chanter, we got a Paladin, we got a Ranger, we got a Druid, we got a Cypher, we get a Monk, we get a Barbarian, and we get a Rogue. So we get all classes as companions. You don't need to worry about. So when you pick a starting class, play what you like the most. If you are into melee, go with Fighter, go with Barbarian, go with a Paladin. If you are into ranged, go with Ranger, go with Cypher, go with Chanter. Okay, if you like Wizards, go with it. So play what you like. Do not worry about companions. The game is perfectly balanced and it's gonna cover all classes through companions. You won't lose a thing. Now it's your choice when you wanna play. I'll say this briefly only. The most OP class in a game by far is the Priest. It's followed closely by Wizard. And on top of it all, those two are followed by Druid and Paladin. All other classes belong to the mid tier, and the lowest tier would be Ranger, Cypher, and Chanter, because they take quite a lot to scale and they require a lot of game knowledge. So told you what's best, what's mid tier, and what's the hardest, or better to say the weakest tier. Game settings. How you see it here in the game settings: tick quest updates, screen edge scrolling, and show news. Those three you wanna tick, this three you wanna tick off. As far as the difficulty goes, untick auto level companions. When you start the game, you don't want auto level up. Trust me, you don't wanna do it, you're taking out the fun in the game. Okay, most fun is the actual leveling. As far as auto pause settings go, you want enemy spotted ticked with stop party movement, you want hidden object found tick, and you want combat start tick. What it does, it pauses the game when enemies are spotted. Okay, very important, so you can prepare. It pauses when a hidden object is found, so you can actually see what it is, and when combat starts, of course, so you can reallocate and start the combat from your point. Maximum level in Pillars of Eternity 1, including its both DLCs, the White March 1 and 2, is 16. It sounds little, but every level feels powerful, and it's gonna impact drastically the power spike in a game and what you can do and the amount of fun factor. Of course, leveling matters in this game. In other words, there are 6 main attributes in the game, which would be might, constitution, dexterity, perception, intelligence, or let's say intellect, and resolve. Compared to other CRPGs where 1-2 attributes matter, in Pillars every single attribute matters for every single class. That's how the rules are. Might will increase damage on all classes, no matter if you're a barbarian or a wizard. You will hurt more when you have might. Constitution raises overall health for all classes in the game. Again, extremely important. Dexterity raises action speed, and it's important for 80% of classes. Only the classes that don't benefit out of the action speed, like Priest for example, can sacrifice dexterity. Perception, absolutely great on every single class, cause the higher the perception is, the bigger the chance to hit in combat. Perception is probably the most important attribute in the game. Intellect, it raises the overall area of effect of spells. What does it mean? For example, when you click, you see how big the area is. The lower the intelligence, the smaller the circle. The bigger the intelligence, the bigger the circle. So that's what intelligence does. It also, for spells that last for like 5, 10, 15 seconds, they're gonna last longer the bigger the intelligence is. At the end, we have resolve, which is very weird, and you need to know how it works. Big resolve on casters means they're gonna be able to cast spells without being interrupted, because interruption is a very important thing in Pillars of Eternity. Here, the reason is very simple. You can interrupt enemies as well as enemies can interrupt your party. When you get interrupted, you get cancelled, okay? When you try to cast a spell, you get interrupted and basically you lose a fight. So the bigger the resolve is, the bigger the concentration is, the less chance you have to be interrupted. Not only that, it also raises deflection on bruisers and on tanks. And on top of it all of the attributes, might, constitution, dexterity, perception, intelligence, and resolve, are raising the overall defenses. Now, what are the overall defenses in the game? Those would be flat deflection against physical attacks, fortitude, reflex, and will. Some of the spells need high will, so you can resist the factor, okay? Like when enemy tries to dominate or charm, you're gonna defend with will, okay? When enemies try to knock you out, you're gonna defend with fortitude. When enemies cast a fireball or some nimble spell, you're gonna defend with reflex. And when enemies go flat in on you with a mace, with a hammer, with a sword, then you're gonna fight with deflection. You're gonna defend with deflection. And to top it all off, deflection also has something that's called damage reduction. And damage reduction has 3 different types of physical. That would be pierce, slash, and blunt. Blunt with hammers and maces, pierce with spears, bows, and so on. Slash with swords, with axes, okay? The higher those numbers are, the better the chance for you to survive. And on top of it all, there's defenses against elemental damage, like corrode, fire, ice, and so on. So those would be all defenses in the game. Every single number matters, and that's a fact. Now, what are the numbers here? Overall health and endurance. Health is how much you can take without resting. Once you rest, health fully recovers. While endurance is how much damage you can take during one fight. Okay, so if you take like 300 damage and you're left with 76 health from 376, it's gonna take away from health, turn it into endurance, and make it 376 for the next fight. And It's going like that until you rest. That's how health works in the game. What's damage? That's the amount what you deal, as well as the type of damage. Some can be crush, some can be slash, some can be pierce, and so on. What is accuracy? The most important thing in a game. That's what? The bigger the accuracy, the bigger the chance for you to hit. You wanna have high accuracy on every single companion and main class as possible. Accuracy is extremely important. I'll stress it out again. The higher the perception, the higher the accuracy. I already explained what interrupt does. I explained what concentration is, and it's important for casters. And now we're gonna go down and we're gonna check out skills, or better to say skill checks. In the game, there's gonna be events that will require stealth, athletics, lore, mechanics, and survival. Also, not only through events, also through exploration, you're gonna need all of these skills. Stealth is very important if you wanna steal. You should always have one companion in the game with high stealth. So there's 6 in total that you can take in a team. One should always have huge stealth so you can steal, because there's a lot of things to steal and a lot of good items to get from stealing. Only one, the others don't need it. Athletics, very important during combat and through some events where athletics are required. But during combat, bruisers are those that want high athletics, like Barbarian, Fighter, Paladin, Monk. They all benefit out of athletics because athletics gives them something that's called second wind. It's especially important early on in a game because it's basically an extra healing. Yeah. The next in line would be lore. Also, not only used in events to win some encounters, okay, some conversations and so on. It's also used to cast spells. Wizards, clerics, they all benefit out of high lore. So this game has something that's called scrolls. All of these parchments would be scrolls, and when you have lore high enough, you see the requirement for every scroll, the first row on every spell. When you have high enough lore, you're gonna be able to cast spells through scrolls. So if you run out of spells, of spell usages basically, then you can cast spells from scrolls. So that's why lore is important. And now, the most important skill would be mechanics. Mechanics is by far the most important thing that exists in a game. You should have high mechanics on at least one character. I recommend having high mechanics on Alot and perhaps on Kana and let's say on Devil of Karok. So you'll always have a companion with high mechanics. If you go and opt in for your main to have high mechanics, then you don't need to worry about anything in the game, basically. Why high mechanics? Very simple. You unlock doors, you unlock chests, you spot traps, you spot hidden routes. The entire different world opens up with high mechanics. Okay, mechanics, always max it out whenever you can on at least one character. This is like something that you just can't skip in the game. And not only that, you're also gonna be able to disarm traps and place traps for other enemies to step into the later about it. The last one would be survival. Extremely important when you decide to camp, when you decide to rest. Why? Because the bigger the survival is, the bigger the benefits out of resting, okay? Because there is something when you rest here in survival that's called damage reduction, healing multiplier, damage against certain enemies, damage against flanked enemies, and so on, which I'll explain how it works later on. So the bigger the survival, the better. Who should have high survival? Barbarians, fighters, paladins. Why? Because damage reduction 1 becomes damage reduction 7 and then it's damage reduction number 2. Okay, on 13 points it's damage reduction number 3. Okay, higher damage reduction, the bigger the survival. Same applies for every effect when you rest. Survival is extremely important as well in the game. All companions should have at least 1 point into survival so they can have at least that first damage reduction bonus when resting, because you're gonna rest a lot in this game. Now, speaking about mechanics, when you wanna spot, you always need to sneak, okay? Scouting mod. When you are into scouting mod, there is a chance for you to detect hidden objects. Way much bigger chance than when you run like this. Okay, so basically you will go and play all 100 hours of how long the game is in stealth mode, in scouting mode. Okay, not only that it's good for combat, it's also good for exploration, or better to say it's mandatory for exploration, and you should always cover every corner of every single map in the game by sneaking through every corner that exists if you want to discover all secrets. When you can't discover a secret, it means that your mechanics is low, so some areas you will also need to backtrack. Formations. Formations now, you should always have a tank up front, bruisers behind the tank, squishes and supporters behind bruisers, and that's how you play information. Inventory, itemization. This game, as I said at the beginning of this video, has its own set of rules. In other words, you cannot stack might or any attribute. You can only have, for example, if I have intellect on this helmet here that gives +2, and if I go with intellect on a ring or with a cape, it's gonna calculate the highest amount per item. So if the highest amount was 2 and here it was 1, it's gonna count as 2, it won't count as 3. You cannot stack attributes, so every character benefits out of every attribute. In my case here, for a barbarian, I have intellect on a helmet, then I have resolve on armor, then I have all defenses on a cape, I have flat deflection, I have dexterity here on one ring, I got might on the belt, and that's how I covered most of the attributes. Okay, so if I had might 3 times, it would count only once. So be careful when you equip characters. It's extremely important to know that you cannot stack attributes. Not only attributes, you cannot stack, for example, fortitude, reflex, and will. For example, if you have fortitude, reflex, and will on a ring, and you find a cape that gives fortitude, reflex, and will, you either go with a ring or you go with a cape. You can't go with both. It won't count as +18 to fortitude, +18 to reflex, +18 to will. It will only count as 9. Now, when I explained that, I hope that you understood how the game works and what are the rules. This is very important. If some fight feels difficult, you always have consumables. You can eat a lot of different meals or drink a lot of different beverages and so on. Raise damage reduction, raise constitution, raise health, raise everything. Okay, there's a lot of consumables in the game, a lot of potions as well, so make sure to drag and drop into the quick item bar so you can use them when you fight. Always, also, you should have a summon on every single companion. So if everyone has a summon, okay, that means that when you start a difficult fight, you can open up the fight with 6 summons at the first round, which gonna make combat drastically easier. You're gonna have time to buff up and so on later about it. The last thing that I wanna speak about for the inventory would be crafting. Crafting, where you can craft food, where you can craft potions, where you can craft scrolls and so on, that will drastically help you out, especially in the early game. So do not miss on this button here that says crafting and check out what everything does. When you hover over, you're gonna see what it gives and what materials it takes to craft. Speaking about crafting, you're gonna find a lot of uniques in a game. So everything that's yellow is basically unique, everything that's white is soulbound. Soulbound weapons or armor are the strongest items in the game. By far, they're white, you cannot miss them, okay? While uniques are next to them, okay, in power. Blues are usually garbage, and whites are classic regular weapons and armor. Now, speaking about it, you cannot upgrade soulbounds. They upgrade on their own with their own specific tasks. For example, be revived during combat 5 times to unlock the next level, and the weapon will increase in its power. That's how you upgrade soulbound items. While unique items require materials to upgrade, okay? And these would be all available upgrades in the game. You can upgrade weapons and armor. You cannot upgrade gloves, rings, and amulets. So only weapons and armor. So when you go, again, on a weapon, you go on enchant, and then you're gonna see exactly what it takes to upgrade a weapon. Most of the upgrades are for accuracy and flat damage percentage. That goes from accurate to legendary upgrades. Okay, you find materials along the way as you play through exploration, of course. Secondary upgrades are usually effects, whether your weapon is gonna burn enemies, poison them, freeze them, or shock them. Third upgrades are towards the enemy type. And the last through DLC, you're gonna be able to upgrade weapons like the maximum upgrade with a white forge, with the Durgan iron ingot. Be careful. You gotta pick one weapon and one armor per companion that you're gonna max out. There's not enough materials in a game to max all items. So if you like, I don't know, for example, the Blade of the Endless Pots, and if you decide to upgrade Blade of the Endless Pots, you gotta stick with it till the very end of the game. I hope I made myself clear. There's not enough materials. Same applies for armor upgrades. Have it in mind. Always and always, before going to the next map and so on, make sure that you buy camping supplies. This here, okay, are the camping supplies. Always have maximum of 2 camping supplies so you can rest and recover your health and your spell usages and so on. Pay attention on camping supplies when you play. On every trader, under the selling option, there are these dices where you can retrain, or better to say, this is a respec that costs low amount of coin to fully respec a companion or your main. You respec from level 1, so you can make them however you wished. This is a perfect example of how a CRPG should be done. Full freedom for the player to respec from level 1 every single companion in the game. The only thing they keep is their overall class. You cannot change classes, but you can change every single talent in the game. After like 20 hours or so in a game, you're gonna discover your main hub, or better to say the one you're looking at right now. I don't want to discover way too much and spoil, but you're gonna discover Caed Nua. And Caed Nua has its own upgrades, okay? The stronghold, the tower, over there on the tab, and here you're gonna get events that you're gonna resolve. You're gonna get a lot of different things that are happening. You need to make choices and there's gonna be consequences, okay? And you're gonna have all of these upgrades, okay, for the Caed Nua. Eventually you'll level them all up, but what's the most important upgrades early on for Caed Nua for a solid start? What you should build. The first in order that you should upgrade is the main keep. It's very important. After the main keep, it would be Warden's Lodge. It's extremely important because of the bounties. Then you want to go with all of the walls and defenses, raise them as high as you can, because there is something here that's called prestige, and the other thing would be security. Prestige gives you coin, security gives you, well, security for the castle, so you don't get invaded as often. So after those two, you go with security, and then you can go and slowly upgrade everything else. It doesn't matter that much. The most important things are those two, the hall and the Warden's Lodge, and then you can play. Speaking about the Warden's Lodge, this is the Warden's Lodge in Caed Nua. Once you create it, go there immediately and speak with the NPC that gives you bounties. Once you get bounties, you get 4 in a batch. There's 3 or 4 batches during the vanilla campaign, and that would be 16 bounties, I think, or 15, it doesn't matter, one is with 3. But once you get the bounties, bounties are the most important thing in the game because of a very simple reason. Huge amount of experience, great amount of loot, great amount of coin. You wanna do bounties. And definitely, they're not easy, but they're worth it. So that's why I say max it out fast in Caed Nua, so you can progress faster in the game. Now, how do we do it and in what order? From the main one, we go to Valewood. From Valewood to Gilded Well, we immediately recruit Talot and Adair. Then we do not spend a lot of time here exploring and so on. We're gonna come back later on. We go to Magrant's Fork, recruit Durance, the priest. From Magrant's Fork, we're rushing through Black Meadow, just passing through it, and we're opening up Caed Nua. We're recruiting Kana. We're conquering Caed Nua. After we conquer Caed Nua, we go down here to Wooden Plains. we recruit the final companion Sagani, then we go to the Stormwall Gorge, we recruit the Druid, then to the Deerford village where we recruit the Grieving Mother, and then back to Caed Nua. Now you got all companions in vanilla. Okay, that's the order, and then you can start exploring and finishing all of the quests and side quests. You don't need to worry about a damn thing in this game. Why? Because it's not time limited. You can always finish. You're not rushed. So that's why I say go for companions like I showed it here and in what order. And then once we collect all companions and we get to Caed Nua, then we go to Enslow Compass and we buy Soulbound items. Because Enslow Compass has amazing Soulbound items. Keep your coin. Because if you wanna get the company's Captain Cap from Enslow Compass, the Royal Deathfire Cannoneer Belt, which is extremely good from Enslow Compass, the War Club of the Mataru, and another Soulbound that would be a crossbow, I think, something like that. It doesn't matter. If you want them, remember, keep your money for Enslow Compass Trader. And then, once we're done with this part, then we can transfer to the DLC and we can go to Stalwart, recruit the Monk, recruit the Barbarian, and go to the Longwatch Falls. Now, what's on the Longwatch Falls? Longwatch Falls also has two extremely good Soulbounds. And that's the best freaking early start that you can make in a game. The first one would be the Grey Sleeper. Extremely powerful S-Stock. Very easy to upgrade as well. Probably the biggest cheat in a game early on would be the Grey Sleeper. And it's very easy to acquire. The second one on Longwatch Falls would be the Greenstone Staff. A quarterstaff for Wizard, Druid, or Monk. Once we get those Soulbounds from the Enslow Compass and from the Longwatch Falls, we can finally start playing the game. Do not forget to revisit Valewood, Gilded Vale, so basically clear out the entire northwest part of the map, then clear the entire southwest part, then you're gonna transfer to the southeast part, and you're gonna finish up with northeast part. That's how we go, so like this. Okay, counterclockwise. Basically, this is how we play this game from Caed Nua. If that's a clock, it's counterclockwise. That's how you should clear maps. Combat mechanics now. The most important thing in combat is to sneak. When you sneak, enemies can't detect you and you can position before the combat starts. Yeah. Choke points are bread and butter in the early game. Choke points are narrow corridors or, the best case scenario, doors like this, where you can put your tank or Adair or your main or Pallegina or so on a choke point. You switch off the AI, it doesn't move, you make him defensive, while the rest of the party buffs and casts damage dealing spells. So choke points are the primary thing to do from level 1 to level 6. How do we trigger the fights? Usually with a priest early on we can ramp up, for example, a sigil in front of the tank, okay, on a choke point for enemies to be prone or to receive damage when they get close on a choke point. Then we can use someone like Alot, for example, to cast and stack up the chill flag before opening the fight, okay, on a choke point. And now there's 3 chill fogs plus the trap, and you can freely open up the fight. There will tank them up and you're gonna win the fight on a choke point. Very good thing if you don't wanna tank is after you're done your traps and your damage over time spells and so on, to use something, for example, like Fireball and trigger the enemies from afar. Okay, a rolling flame in this case, and trigger the enemies from afar. They're gonna enter all of the effects from the spells over time, and that's how we play early game. During encounters, when it gets rough, your squishy, for example Alot, should always be far away from the hardest companion to kill, in this case Adair, or I don't know, Maneja or Pallegina. Alot should always remain behind so he can expose vulnerabilities on enemies, stun enemies and so on, while Durance should always be behind bruisers and tanks so he can buff them up and debuff enemies. You should always pay attention on how you position in combat. So if enemies are around, this is how you protect Durance, who's gonna buff and debuff. Alot is far away for enemies to reach, while the bruisers are scattered throughout the map and they're defending the priest. Positioning is extremely important in the game. Later on in the game, on top of what I said, stacking up chill fog and stacking up all of the traps and so on, you can open up fights from afar. For example, with the Storm of Holy Fire into the Wall of Many Colors, or delayed Fireball with Alot. And now they cast at the same time and then Fireball explodes. Okay? That's also one of the cool ways how you can open up fights. You can do plenty of different openers with Priest, with Wizard, with Druid, because there's a lot of great spells, especially over time. When the fight is really rough, what you wanna do when fighting a dragon, when fighting some bigger boss and so on, you wanna go and pile all companions like this. From stealth mod, you trigger with some spell or whatever, and when the fight starts, you're casting summons with every single companion in front of you, or better say between you and enemies or the boss. Okay, when that happens, those summons will buy you additional time so you can buff all allies with things like Crowns of the Faithful, with increased accuracy, with increased crits, with increased all defenses and so on. You can use all of those buffs. You can use Rage from Barbarians. You can prepare the fighter. You can do a lot of different self-buffing with Wizard. And when your summons finally die, you're gonna enter the fight like 3 times stronger than when it started. So that's why summons are very good as an opener. Auras, do not forget to trigger auras like Savage Attack, like Paladin's auras, like Priest Cautious Attack, like Fighter's Defender to engage more enemies, or his Cautious Attack once you start fighting the bosses. So do not forget to get those actives on when you play. How do we get XP in the game? Aside from bounties and experience from quests, you cannot get experience out of combat, only by killing the certain amount of enemies. So you're gonna get them in the Cyclopedia, or better to say in Bestiary, and once you learn all of their basically attributes, defenses and so on, then you're gonna get experience out of combat. But during the combat, when you kill an enemy, you do not get XP. So how do we get XP? We get XP through bounties, through quests, tasks, side quests, main quest. We get experience by disarming traps, unlocking chests, discovering new areas. Or better to say, most of the XP in this game you will get through high mechanics. That's why I said that mechanics is extremely important. It's free XP. There's a lot of traps and locked doors and hidden items in this game, and that's how you get XP. Also, for the combat mechanics, great mid-game opener from level 6 to level 10 would be Sworn Enemy from a Paladin. A great one-shot nuke one enemy on a map opener. Have that in mind as well. The best late game opener by far is the Delayed Fireball from a Wizard. The last piece of advice I'll give would be the level requirements for every map. You got level requirements here. I wrote everything down for you. And this is when you're supposed to play each area in the game. You can pause this and use it later on when you play the game to check if you have high enough level to visit a certain area. Now the final part, as far as weapons and armor go. Big heavy armors means less recovery speed, means bigger amount of time required to swing again. The lighter the armor is, okay, if you play in light armor or medium armor, the faster you'll play during combat. But heavy armor also provides better defense. Same applies for weapons. The heavier the weapon is, the slower it is, but it hits harder. The smaller the weapon is, like for example daggers or stilettos, the faster the combat is, okay? But you deal a lesser amount of damage. I've seen plenty of players can get confused during some quests, they can't finish quests and so on, because some of the quests will require for you to go into your stash and then on the crown over here, quest items, and then you'll need to right click on those notes and books and whatnot, so you read them. Once you read them, you will learn something from the book or from the scroll or from the note, and then the quest will pop, and then you'll be able to make progress in a game. So if you are stuck somewhere, please check out the quest items by right-clicking on a certain item in a game, because that could give you progress. It's not that the game is bugged, you just skipped the item when looting. Head over here, the AI is for every companion, including your main class. So you can play with everyone manually, or you can make them do certain stuff with AI behavior. What do I recommend? Bruisers and fighters. For the AI, they should always go with aggressive stances. Okay, so that would be, for example, my barbarian or a dare. You go with a class behavior none on absolutely everyone. You don't want them to cast spells on their own. You want you to do it, so you go with none with class behavior. But auto attack, bruisers, fighters, barbarians, paladins go with aggressive. Priests and druids will go with AI into defensive, while wizard, for example, his AI will always go towards passive. You don't want wizard to go on aggressive or defensive, you want him to go passive because you want to control the wizard and how you cast spells. This is very important thing to consider while playing. Turning on the AI can also help, but it can also ruin combat if you're not careful of the commands. Classes like wizard, priest, and druid require full control from the player. Right-click classes like fighter, paladin, barbarian, monk don't require full control, and they can be aggressive on AI. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you on the next one. Thanks for watching.